He said, no, no, don't tell me. Save it for the show. So
Show
here
me
it
how to
is.
show.
I'm gonna share. Window. There we
It's a
go.
day of sharing today. This is great.
It is.
All right. So this is. Oh wait. Hold on a second. I'm on the wrong thing here. Give me a
By the
second.
way, just while you're doing that, I will say the Craft 5 method of having entry types for everything, I find it super confusing. Do you guys
Uh,
feel that way? Where like fields have entry types and sections have entry types and all that?
I'm mixed on it. I find it annoying sometimes, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of things I like about it.
I
All
think
right.
from the back end coding perspective, I can see how it makes sense. It's like just having an object for everything.
Yeah,
But I will say that from the control panel, I still either go to sections or I go to fields.
me too.
I don't go to entry types.
Same with me. Yeah.
I go to fields and then from there and I choose my content builder and from there then I dive into the nested slide outs that come
Right.
the
Right.
infinite level of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I really like about the new Craft 5 uh, entry type is everything is that I've got this matrix field that I'm building out right here. And then one of my blocks is called card carousel. And then inside here, the cards allow you to set a thumbnail and what content appears. So I really like this because it makes it easy to see what is what. I want to edit this one with this image because I found a typo on the front end. And then I just open it up and I can go and edit it. So I just like the visual cue that you get by setting that thumbnail as the card image.
Isn't there a way, speaking of this infinite slidey panel thing, isn't there a way to enable that for what you just showed, where if you clicked on that, it wouldn't open the entry in the main thing, it slides up on the side?
Oh, um,
I thought there was a way to do that, but I don't, could be wrong. I haven't used Craft 5 very much.
okay.
There
So
there
here,
is there is
let me
a
show again.
link so that you can like sometimes open that panel full screen. But then I always get confused that it's like if I make edits on the full screen and then save it and close it and then go back to the tab I was just on, does it already have the updates? So
All
I
right.
mostly
So
Yeah.
I mostly use the slide outs.
yeah, if you
Yeah.
click on the card, it opens the slide out. And actually, I think I just found a visual bug because it doesn't have the hand. It doesn't tell you that you can click it.
Oh, you click the whole thing there. That's what gives you that? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then
that's odd.
if you click the link, it
Right.
takes you to the full entry. And then if you add a new card, it automatically uses the slide out.
Yeah. Slide out makes sense to me in that context. I think that's,
You know, I
yeah.
like the slide out because it just I don't know, I just like it. At
I
first I
like the
didn't,
slide
but now
out.
I do.
You get used to it.
Yeah.
So the software that we use at Seneca for the class and like holding all of the class information, the PDFs, the notes, the online tests, submitting the assignment, all of these things is called Blackboard. And it has slide outs and it's all slide outs constantly all the time. And I swear I have had instances where there are like 8 slide outs that are happening. And that I feel is too much. Like
Yeah.
there's got to be a better way to like organize it that I don't have to like click and click and click and click and click.
You know what? Something that, so two things about that. First of all, one annoying thing I find about Craft. I don't know why we're picking on Craft a little bit. Although you said something you like about Craft just now, so
Yeah,
that was
you
good.
did.
No, well, I mean we always
Let's
talk about
balance
how
it.
much we like it, but
Yeah.
I think it's good for viewers or listeners to know that hey, it's not perfect despite how much we like it, and there are issues.
Yeah.
So
And
go
they
on.
change stuff. So one of the things I don't like is in the slidey thing sometimes, if you go into an element, it opens a slide panel, and then you go into something that's in that, and it opens the second slide panel, and everything kind of moves over. It's really nice. But some of them have a save button and some of them have an apply button. And if you hit the enter key on your keyboard or return or whatever, it works if it says save, but if it says apply, it does not work. So I'm constantly like moving my mouse around because I like to just hit enter, enter, enter whenever I edit deep into those slidey things, you know? So I don't know why they did that. Why would it be sometimes save and sometimes apply?
This sounds to me like an opportunity to write up a GitHub issue with screenshots.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I don't want to be that guy. It's not that bad.
No,
You know what I mean?
but it annoys you, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
It doesn't annoy me enough to write the issue, but if you do,
But you want me to
I'll
write, yeah.
upvote it.
It's okay.
But then,
Good.
but then Mike is going to have to spend all of that time actually figuring out in which instance it's actually
Yeah.
like when
Repeat the
does it show
steps.
save and when does it show apply and
Actually,
yeah.
I don't think you need to find all of the instances. You could just find one to illustrate it and then say there are others. I don't have time to find it. This is bad UX. Please fix it.
Fix it. Yeah. Well,
And I'm sure it would get fixed. It may be a lower priority.
yeah,
Yeah.
but that's but isn't
It's
that
not
the
a
same?
deal breaker, but
But
it is
isn't-
mildly annoying.
But isn't that the same when the client emails us and is like, this page doesn't work? And you're like, which page?
Yeah.
URL, please. It doesn't work when you enter what data.
Okay.
It works
All
for
right.
me. What have you
doesn't
done?
work in which way?
Bad
Yeah.
Sean. Bad Sean. Just tell him the developer to find
That's
all
right.
the problems.
So let me tell you something super annoying that drives me crazy. I've been working lately with Google Tag Manager. So for those who don't know, if you're using Google Analytics to track stuff on your site, often people use Google Tag Manager. This is like a middleman thing. So if you have to add like some other type of tracking or other, things, buttons you want to track, you can do it in the Tag Manager and you don't have to re-add new code in your website. But they have an interface where you create a tag. So like I want to track this button, clicks on this button, but then you have to create a trigger. So when does it fire? And it's like it fires on this page. That's where the button is or whatever. And when you create the trigger inside the tag, it slides in a panel. But in the panel, it says referenced in this tag. And there's another thing you click on. And I'm frequently going, oh, I have to edit that too. And I click on it. And all it's doing is taking me back to the one it's contained in. So you could literally click infinitely and it just opens the
infinite
one that it
loop.
was just in.
Just
Yeah.
cyclical.
Yeah.
Groundhog
Cyclical,
Day.
something like that.
Yeah.
It's so irritating. It's like, oh yeah, I don't have to do any of this. I just did it. It's just showing me the thing again. Anyway, I wish I should be showing that in a demo, but whatever. I just described it. You get the idea.
Yep.
Google Tag Manager is not user friendly, my friends. Holy cow.
Google, Azure, and AWS, they all suck ass.
Well, I think, and
I'm sorry for the
I
cross language, but you can't change my mind.
don't worry about. I'm not trying to change your mind. I think that what happened was that all of these services that came out at first to do one thing, and they did that one thing, and it was great. And thank you, dear service, for using that one thing. It was easy to set up. It was easy to get into. It was easy to figure out. It gave you the data. The end. But then they wanted it to do more. And users wanted it to do more. And then they started adding more features. And then their features, half of the features you don't even use, but some other users use them.
Yeah.
And then they keep growing and trying to become everything for everybody. And that's what makes them become complicated and excessive and
Yeah.
ridiculous to use.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. In some cases, like Tag Manager also, I did a course one time to get like certified. I have a certification in Tag Manager, technically from Google, but it's like you have to learn about data layers and all this real technical stuff. And I feel like if they really wanted to, they could get some, usability people on the case and get them to explain it in more normal terms, but they have not. They've just left it at very technical for people because that's the people who tend to use it. So
Yeah.
it's like, it's kind of a headache.
Well, I find that everything to do with the search engine optimization and the tag manager and analytics and stuff like that, like you can get like a base. Oh, look at the page hits I had today. Hooray. That's at the end. To actually get into it and like to be able to track an entire user story and see where people are dropping off like that, it takes a very special, like you were saying, a whole specialized course to learn how to set it up and learning about like data sets and layers and things like that. Like it's almost like they're purposely creating their own industry of professionals that only use this one surface. And it's the same with the AWS consultants, and it's the same with Azure, and it's, and it's
Yeah.
crazy.
I will say Microsoft, I've said this before, Microsoft has a really great tool called, what the hell is it called? I forgot what it's called. It's a
Are you talking the
competitor.
analytics thing?
Yeah. Microsoft Clarity. And it's
Never
like
heard of it.
it's sort of like a competitor for Google Analytics, but it's much a little less powerful, and it also has like screen recording and cool stuff like that in it. But it's much, much easier to use. Like I've got little panels, very clear what's going on. So I highly recommend people check that out if they just want to know basic stats rather than going crazy with analytics, Google Analytics.
Well, you could have code for both on your
Yeah,
site.
I do
right?
that frequently. Yeah, I put them both on there. Yeah, that's great. So we only have 10 minutes left, but Amanda, before this call, I was asking you about a couple of things. Do you want to talk about either of those things on this call?
How very cryptic. I love it.
Also, it's
yeah,
not
sure.
a call, I guess, whatever this is.
The chat, or the Slack, and then this and the,
Show? I don't know.
Yeah. So what we were talking about, dear viewer who's watching later, is we've come up in a couple of instances where it's helpful to make the site a little more dynamic, a little more custom. Sometimes it's helpful to use data from a JSON file and then use JavaScript to read it and populate a website using that data. And Mike and I have talked about it in the past. Sean, have you done something like that?
No.
Okay. And so I have a very specific example of a site that I worked on in the past for a client. And I thought I would just do a quick little screen share to show what it is that I did and why I did it. And it's not that hard.
Yeah.
So
Is this like GraphQL kind of stuff?
Oh, no. Like just
okay.
simple JSON file. So it's just like, it's a text file that's formatted in a certain way. And then just JavaScript to read it. And then what you do is you just loop through it and put that data on the site. So
Yeah, so this is
share my...
Yeah, while you go ahead and open it up. While you're opening it, I'm just going to say that I brought this up earlier because I don't really know when I should be using a JSON file to pull data from. Like, I don't know when would be a good case for that versus using templates. I mean, I guess if you're in a headless situation and you're not using your CMS's templates, it's certainly good for that because JavaScript can understand JSON all the time in any environment. But yeah, I'm eager to learn more about this. So fire away.
So specifically for the site here, first I've loaded it. It's a test site, so it shouldn't matter. We've all used a content management system before, a CMS. This company, this client that I was working with, they had all of their stuff in a learning management system, an LMS. And I wasn't really 100% clear on what the learning management system did, but I think that they would have information about the courses they have available. I think that users could sign up on the learning management system and actually take the courses and then do the tests and get their little certification or whatever it was. But my client did not like the output of the front end of the LMS. And it was surprisingly difficult to customize. Basically, this learning management system was here's your output, and you can add content to this section.
Right.
Which sucks, which they absolutely did not want to do. So what they had me come in and do, so this was the before, this is the after. This is the final result. And I'm going to do a side by side and show you comparisons. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open another tab. I'm going to open my browser DevTools. And I'm going to do Control-Shift-P to get to the preferences in the browser DevTools. And I'm going to disable JavaScript because I used JavaScript to read the JSON file and display all of the content. So by turning off JavaScript, we should be able to see what the site looks like just from the output learning management system. Mm-hmm. And what I think I can do is, yay, Windows. Come here, you.
Oh yeah, the
there
double.
and there.
You go.
The double side by side. So you can see that, I mean, it doesn't look awesome, but you can see that the main nav, it was not there in the before. You can see that if we scroll down a bit, like there's really nothing on this page, just some stuff that was populated from the learning management system.
Okay.
So what my JavaScript did was it read all of this information that was going to be populated for the main navigation. And then it also added a bunch of course information. And then it also added their interactive library. And then it also added events that were coming up. And then it also added links to additional resources.
So that's all being sort of injected with JavaScript.
With JavaScript, yeah.
Got
Now,
it.
I could have just like injected it with JavaScript, and that would have been the end of it. But to try to make things future-proof, maybe they don't always want to have the link to the knowledge base. Maybe they don't always want to have the link to the community. Maybe the URL changes in the future. This particular client also had a bunch of different subdomains, and they wanted the main navigation to be different based on the subdomain that the user was coming from. But you don't want to have to, you don't want to have like if statements or switch or something like that. If the subdomain is this, else if the subdomain is that. So what I did was I set up a bunch of different JSON files for each subdomain, and then the JavaScript would read the one that it needed to read and display the information.
Okay.
So this is the type of difference. And now I'm just gonna show a little bit of the code. And this is very small. Let me see if I can zoom in.
Yeah, that's good.
There we go. So first, for example, the additional resources. JSON is a very specific format that is syntactically identical to a JavaScript object. So JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. Okay. But it's a .json file, so you can have it in a separate file. You don't need to like clog up your code with like a really long JavaScript object that you've had to create. What happens with a JSON formatted string is that everything always happens in a name value pair, and then you have a comma giving you the next one. You can have any data type that happens in JavaScript. You can have string values, you can have number values, you can have Boolean values, you can have array values, and you can have object values. So in this example, the resources is an array of objects. Right. And then each of these objects, is going to have their own name value pairs that are happening inside. So from here, I've got the name, I've got the URL, and I've got the target, like if it's going to open in a blank, in a new tab or not. Yeah. So what my JavaScript does, and let's see here, additional resources. So all I did was I made an async. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can read a JSON file. You're basically just getting data without refreshing the screen. You could do it with an XML HTTP request, which is super old and antiquated. Nobody wants to do that anymore. You could use a fetch, which came about in, I think it was 2015, 2012, 2015. But the new way to do it is, pardon?
I've used fetch.
Yeah, absolutely. You can totally use fetch. I think a lot of ways people do it now is with this async await. So what you do is you create an asynchronous function that is going to wait for the fetch of the specific URL. And then it's going to wait because when you do a fetch, it grabs not only like the JSON content, but it also returns all that header information. If the status was okay, if the URL that you actually fetched from, we don't actually care about all of that except for debugging. So you just want to grab the JSON of it. And in this exact example here, I can probably do this. I wish, do you know in Visual Studio Code, can I split top and bottom?
Yes.
Instead of left, right? Do you know how to do that?
You might be able to drag it, drag that, or perhaps not. I don't actually know. Sorry.
Oh, well.
It will work. I guarantee I've done it accidentally.
Accidentally doesn't help. Anyway, so I grabbed the JSON of it, and from that, you can see that I have added it's using jQuery, so a lot of it's shortcutted. But I added into the HTML of this existing element that was added by the template. I'm going to add an H2 that is the data heading. So it's just going to be the value of the heading.
Yeah.
And then what I did was for each of the resources. So for each is just a JavaScript loop, which means it's going to do the same thing for all of the items in the loop. So for each of the items in the loop, I'm going to put it in this temporary variable. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a list item that has the link, and it's going to list the resource name. And if there's a target, it's going to add that target equals the resource.
Right. That's pretty clear.
And then I just added it to the front end, which is going to be all of this stuff down here.
Nice.
So this is a good
does not
example.
exist.
Like I said earlier about, why would this be better than using, let's say in Craft, like a for loop in their templates. This is a great example because you're pulling data from a completely separate thing, from this learning module, right? It's not even...
So for example, in this specific case, I am pulling custom data that the client has access to edit at any time because it is just a text file.
Okay.
So anytime
Got
they
it.
want to go in there, anyone who's like technically savvy because it's like in a Git repo and only certain people have access to it, et cetera, whatever, they can add things to it. They can change it. They can modify it. And this specific customization, the specific like area to add content did not exist in the learning management system.
Yeah. Right.
So
okay.
I find that things like this are really good to use when you are sort of handcuffed to the output. Because you can use JavaScript to add HTML elements, to edit them, to modify them, to move them around, to remove them even. I'm also working on a personal project right now that still does the same type of thing. It is created an API that is displaying data from the Craft site, or that's fetching data from the Craft site. But again, I'm using JavaScript to display it on a page because I'm working with modal windows, which is just the design, how it is right now, instead of the slide outs that we were talking about at the beginning of this Lunch Bytes. But it's the same thing. If you click on, there's like a list of data. And if you click on the button beside any of the list of data, I want to show other stuff that's associated with what it is that the user clicked on. So instead of like preloading all of the data for this, all of the data for that, all of the data, because the user may not click on it.
Yeah.
So now when the user does click on it, I've got JavaScript that's going to go hit this API call, get the JSON data, parse through it, throw it in the modal window, and then display the modal window.
Right.
Right.
And then when you close it, I delete all that data. And then when the user clicks on the next one, it does all that again.
Yeah, that's very clear. It's a good. That's a good example of when someone might use this. I get it now. I think we just got a free course from teacher Amanda. How about that? That's great. And I didn't use the phrase "stop trying to make fetch a thing" once. You guys know that reference?
No.
Never mind. It's a reference from a movie. Someone kept saying things are fetch as if that means cool.
Oh, that does
I
sound a
just-
little familiar.
I just Googled something related to what you were talking about. So you said you have your client, technically savvy client, go in and edit the file. I know that Google Sheets allows you to export to various data. I just checked. You can export a Google Sheet to JSON. So they could use something that's got a nice, easy UI to add and delete items. Like, so making it even better for your non-technically
client.
savvy client.
Absolutely, yeah. In this very specific case, because the only way to get things on the server is to be deployed through the Git repo, and so only the tech people of the company have access to that. But in your case, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like you could just have the Google Sheet there, and then you would know the actual URL for the exported JSON file that would automate it. Well, based on what I did a long time ago, it gives you there's a URL that just takes what you want and uses it in the new format. So you could make your fetch call to googlesheets.com Amanda's file or whatever, theoretically, based on my really quick Google right now.
Yeah, I have a friend who one time made a website that instead of using a CMS to pull the content, it pulls it from a Google Sheets spreadsheet. Like that's where they manage content. It's a very small site. It was like, you put in a news story title and in one column, and the next column is all the content or whatever, and it would just parse it right directly from it, which is pretty wild. That'd be pretty user friendly, I suppose. For a small, it wouldn't be very good for big sites, I guess.
Yeah.
It'd get out of control pretty quick. Okay, cool. That was great. Thanks, Amanda.
Yeah, awesome.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you, listeners, for joining us and going a little bit overtime today.
That's right. We all good?
We're
right.
good.
That's cool.
All right.
Thanks, friends.
Happy April.